Alright, so as soon as I joined the realm, I found my friend, which will be in the same faction as me, and the same nation. By the way, there is two factions. Here they are. Spoiler alert, I will be in the Liburnian faction, and my common enemies, everyone else in the server, will be on the Telslakian faction. You'll figure out the true faction members when you watch the rest of the series. Alright, so now I am on a boat, with my faction member. We are going to find our base. Let's get a time-lapse of us boating there. We were off to a great start until he somehow died. I'll just find a good base spot, get a plane, and fly over and pick him up. No biggie. There we go. Problem solved. That actually took like 2 hours to do, but you are lucky, and you got to watch it in like 5 seconds. Subscribe for the dedication I just put in there. So for a while after this, all I was doing was boring stuff, like building the base and mining, so let me skip to a good part, where a quote-unquote new teammate arrives. I thought an alien was invading too. Anyways, after lots of boring mining and building, this was the finished military base. After this, was the attack. The attack on my common enemy, InfineInc. I spent an entire day trying to find his base, but we found it. There goes his entire chest storage. Probably will cry after seeing it gone. I hate bees, in Minecraft, and in real life, so this is going to be a long battle. Guess who loves bees? My common enemy, InfineInc. Who will win? One sting from these bees would have killed me. Look at my health. The bee decided to retreat right when its partner died. Good timing. There goes their option to buy planes. Okay, now let's burn these items. All I need is flint, which I can obtain from gravel. Here we go. So once we returned home, we were greeted with this message. InfineInc knows where our base is, and he wants revenge. So we went into lockdown, and hid everything under the base. You might be asking, how did InfineInc find your perfectly hidden base? Well, that so-called teammate that brought a stealth bomber last season was not a teammate, but a spy. He gave him all the information, and abandoned us. So we decided we wanted to move everything to a secret base, underground, to bedrock level. So that they can't see our name tags, here is a time lapse of us quickly moving everything down there. So after I moved everything, I wasn't done. I wanted to make a new base, far away from my old base, and I decided I wanted to move everything to a newer, and better base. My base design was a flat base plate made of different variants of deep slate, with buildings on it. It would be my future nation. I built a ladder that goes from bedrock to my newest base, where I can soon connect the two bases together and transfer items. I knew that I can't build everything by myself, so I got a new teammate. I'm R0535. In the past few series, he has been my teammate. Once he arrived at our base, we started building, and after a really long time, our base was really nice. I'll give you a tour. So this is my bed. These are our furnaces. These are our utilities. These are our storage chests. This is our enchantment table. This is our villager hall. It has lots of villagers, including a mending villager. Look at all these good enchantments. This is where we will be building a military base. It's still a work in progress. And this is also a work in progress. We will be building our nation's capital here. It doesn't look like a nation yet, but it is. This is our XP farm, also referred to as our mob farm. And this is where our sugar canes are. So after all of this war, I decided to settle it. I asked my common enemy, InfineInc, if we could do a battle on a battlefield. The battlefield was going to take place at the natural spawn point. And he approved of this battle. While I was setting up the battlefield, we found items that made us super powerful, and even found a trial chamber, which we looted. While we were setting up our battlefield, something went wrong. My teammate, IMR0535, betrayed me. He decided to go to the dark side. But something, consider it a miracle, saved my nation. My enemy accidentally texted me his base coordinates. So I traveled like never before. Standing at his base. Before I took it all, I had a little speech. This day is called the attack on InfineInc. He that shall see this day, will be a soldier. First, I destroyed a gigantic turret the InfineInc made. Then I was brutally attacked by his second turret. Just like that, I destroyed the turret with my bow and arrow. There goes hundreds of the items he worked hard for. can say that I successfully destroyed InfineInc's base. Then, was the day where I met with InfineInc. And then I successfully conquered my enemy, for the second time. So after I destroyed my enemy's base for the second time, I knew that an attack on my base was going to happen sooner or later, so I moved everything out of my base. My plan was to bring each boat one by one to a spot where I can set up my base. I had a yearning to build an underwater base, so I just found a good spot off the shore. I decided to transport all the items using minecart chests. After a while, my base looked like this. But there is one problem. It wasn't underwater. I had a plan to loot an ocean monument with my teammate, so we can get sponges and make our base underwater. After all of that, we cured a zombie villager, got a pet panda named Pandy, and built our base. After a while, it was looking good. If you are wondering where that beacon is from, I stole it from InfineInc's base when I destroyed it. All of a sudden, a new player joined. If I don't go to the spawn point, he will become powerful, so I had to stop him. But everyone else wanted to do with him. This was the First World War. Sadly, my teammate didn't show up, and my other teammate, which came, showed up a bit later. This is when my teammate showed up. He betrayed me, but came back. Somehow we can trust him. In the end, he ended up escaping. I learned from that battle that I need to get powerful armor and tools. I decided to fulfill that, and this is how I look. I'm on my way to full netherite. So after our recent world war at the spawn point was just ruins. Literal ruins. So the owner of the realm decided to put in place a system where we set up shops at spawn, and nobody can grief them without a ban being in place. So I decided to clear out my area. After clearing out my shop's area, I moved everything from my original base and put in my 40 by 40 square where my shop will be. I decided to create a few farms, a sugarcane farm, an animal pen, and a crop farm. And beside that was where my storage and living was going to be. Also, in the other corner was my conduit and my shopping. I made my first purchase at my shop by transporting 2 villagers to a competitor's shop. So business was going well, but somehow there was a loophole in the system, and I got robbed of a lot of things. I won't go over it too much as it's super complicated, but we decided to move out far away from the shopping district. And yeah, it wasn't just getting robbed. The shop I've made my sales to destroyed me. So I am going to get revenge. There was no better way to do this than to use a wither. So we started by spawning a wither at his statue, and letting it turn into chaos. So after a while, his statue looked like this. But it doesn't end here. We decided to take the Wither to his shop. Just to get an extra hint of spicy revenge. Then, we actually had to kill the Wither, so it was another battle at the spawn battlefield. So we defeated the Wither, leaving the spawn point even more of a mess than before. If it weren't for that new player, spawn would look as clean as new. So we decided to pack up our things, and move to a new base. Shortly after we made our base, it got invaded. So we made a new base, in the END. My teammate decided to give me a netherite pickaxe, which was a game changer. Now I can mine anything. Comment, thanks SoundBlockz0913, so I can pay him back. Anyways, I decided find a new base spot, because the end is too hard to get resources at, so I found this spot. So I built a floor out of tiled deep slate. Then built some walls. And made a water elevator. So I yearned to build a military base, because I had no means of defense. So I decided to do so. I hope you guys like time lapses, because here is a time lapse of me building my military base. This military base will have a runway, space for jets, and a building for maintenance and other things. Also, I hope you enjoy this time-lapse-ish music. guys enjoyed that small time lapse, I did a lot more, but let's just skip to the part where I finished the runway. So after that, I built a little building next to the runway, and here is how the military base looks. Comment a rating of it from 1 to 10. 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. So after that, I was strip mining, because my goal was to finally get netherite. And I found a base. I don't know whose base it was, or if it was looted, but there was stuff there. So we started an attack. Well, it was time to destroy this place. Where I destroyed this place.
Block.
So after that siege, look what I had. Oh yeah, most of you guys haven't watched the previous episodes. Well, I have full netherite. My goal that I have had for a while. Also, see this? This is my nation's flag. This explains it all. Also, the one on the right in this picture is InfineInc's flag. Anyways, me and my teammates spent like 8 hours on this gunpowder farm, and here it is. Shout out to him, he spent so long making this beast. Thank him in the comments. I mean, this industrial monster shouldn't be possible, let alone on Bedrock Edition. So after that, we decided to respawn the Ender Dragon, so we can get the second egg. So you see this camel? Well, there is a long story behind this camel, so let's rewind all the way back to the last episode. Alright, so I was basically telling everyone that I had the first gunpowder farm, thanks to my great teammate. But, somehow, the teammate who betrayed me, Chris, wanted to join back, because of that. I was about to tell him no, but then ProblockZ0913 said he would be a good asset. So I decided to rebuild my old base, and make it suitable for Chris. This will prevent him from being able to grief everything we own, and will make sure he is part of our nation. the base looked like this. It had lots of sugarcane and other resources. It's a good spot for Chris. I mean, for just a few hours, this is pretty good. So he seemed pretty happy about his new base, except one thing. He wanted carrots for breeding. And that means I have to travel far. And so I did. After literal hours of searching, I found carrots. Then I figured out that my spawn point was here, and I needed to get back to the base, without fireworks. So I had to walk there. And that's how I got to this moment in time. See that base there? Well, it's my old teammate's base. For some reason, my teammate didn't want me to destroy it. So I just used its nether portal. Well, eventually, I made it home, and dropped off the carrots. So I had another yearning, and this time it was to build something like this. I mean, it's a cool concept at first, but it takes so long to build a gigantic sphere, so I decided to make it a little bit smaller, like 50 by 50. So I decided to settle with a 50 by 50 sphere. You are probably asking, why do you need a gigantic Death Star? Well, I'm supposed to keep this as secret as possible, but it serves sort of the same as a secret base, except for other secret uses as well. Also, this base is far from my base, or any other base, to keep it secret. So I finished the baseline of half of the sphere, and realized it would be really hard to make it a sphere, so I was deciding if I should set it at something like this. Even though it's a square, it wouldn't serve the purpose of looking like the Death Star, but instead serve the purpose of being a sort of Death Star, optimal for specifically my nation, and maybe soon the Liburnian faction. Instead of naming it Death Star, I would name it the Gas Planet, as I'm not aiming for a Death Star anymore. Plus, I could make this cube so much bigger than 50 by 50, and bigger than 100 by 100, with minimal design difficulties. Anyways, I decided to stop working on it, and work on it another day. Next episode might feature me working on this, and possibly finishing it. After that, I was convinced that I needed to make an iron farm, because I spent all my iron building planes to fly to the gas planet, and now I have no iron left. So, I got to work. Here is a time-lapse of me building it. Also, before this I built an iron farm, but it turns out it only worked on Java Edition and it said #Bedrock Edition iron farms in the description. So, this is me building a new one. like 8 hours combined, including the Java Edition farm I had to create, plus the villagers I spent 3 hours getting off camera. I'm being sarcastic, it took way too long. Anyways, the day after that, I set up flags everywhere across the bases and farms my nation owns. Also, that flag right there is my faction's flag, and the red flag in my hand is my nation's flag. Decided to buy some new vehicles for my military base. And that is where I left off. Wait, where am I? No way. It can't be. Have I found InfineInc's base? It turns out, I finally found InfineInc's base. And it was far away. So, I got to work, and destroyed this place. Then, InfineInc joined the realm. This was a disaster. So I left the game, hoping he wouldn't notice anyone was here. But then, I decided to go back in, and fight him. I did it. I defeated InfineInc. Now it was just time to finish him off, and obliterate his base. Then, I got kicked from the game. It was controversial, but InfineInc decided to ban me for 2 weeks for exploiting. So originally I was thinking that I was going to be banned from playing in this series for a week, but my server owner realized that his ban was wrong, and let me come back in. But little did he know, how big of a mistake he made. This was the last time that he will move to another base, and keep his integrity. So, I went back. I got Imar 0535 to fight with me, and he carried. At that moment, we found InfineInc's treasure. Everything he had. One spot. That was InfineInc's defeat. To summarize everything that happened, Imar 0535 joined me in a battle against InfineInc, and we found his treasury where he keeps everything he has, and we destroyed all of it. After that, I was on my way to unite a nation. I was going to reunite with my old teammate, SoundBlockz 432, and have an united empire of 4 people. Which is pretty much the entire server except for InfineInc. Here is another time-lapse. I will be building a military base for our new united nation. that, our new nation looked like this. We were the most powerful empire. Leaving the series off on a good note.